one of the things that I loved as a parent was reading books with them and reading to them and taking them to the library. So I'm very passionate about reading, particularly in the early years, because one of the things with reading is in the beginning years of school, we're learning how to read. So then from about grade 3 onwards, we're reading to learn. So that's why I'm really a passionate advocate about getting it right in the early years, because you're setting your child up for success. And what does success look like in reading and how we can support them. At the end of the presentation, there'll be time for some questions, so I'm happy to take questions as well. So, learning to read and write is arguably the most complex task humans face. We speak English, well I hope we speak English, we try to, and read in English, and it's one of the most complex languages on our planet phonetically to learn. Learning to read and write is one of the most complex tasks, and particularly with the English language system, because we don't have a direct correlation, one letter, one sound, and we have combinations of letters and combinations of sounds, letters that, or a sound that can be represented by different letters. So it's complex. So I think as a parent we have to remind ourselves and remember and honour that with our kids, that these beginning years are really tricky for them to navigate, and that it's up to us to be really supportive and build on strengths, and if there's challenges, obviously address those, but always building from that strength model, because it's easy for us to look at the deficit model. Oh, they don't get this, or they're not there, they need to be there. But always remember, honour your child with building them up, and you always build from strengths, and then with the challenges you address those. Because one of the biggest indicators, and I was just at a meeting this morning with support teachers from the Sunshine Coast, is the level of anxiety in our students is escalating at a great rate of knots and is impacting them in high school. So if we can build that resilience and love of learning in the early years, we're setting them up for long-term success regardless of the challenges they may face. So that's another area I'm very passionate about as well. So what is reading? A lot of times parents go, oh, my child's obviously gifted and talented because they're reading. They read everything. And we often hear that and we go, yeah, well, that's great. They're probably a really good decoder. Because reading is more complex than just being able to recognise letters and symbols and that's a word and then that's a sentence. We actually read for meaning. Who's on Facebook or Pinterest, or you Google stuff if you want a recipe. I was just at lunch and had a great tortilla vegetable stew. I thought I could make that, and straight onto Google to read the recipe. So we usually read for a purpose. So we want to instill in our children that sense that reading is purposeful, that it's got a meaning and a reason, not just a chore. And that firstly, that readers need to be able to translate or decode the marks on the page or screen. And a little bit later, we're going to go through a monitoring tool that your students' teachers are using to check those early concepts of reading in the early years. And that's a way that we can pick up those strengths, those things they're doing well, and areas that they're not doing so well, and that we need to address. The second thing is that readers need to be able to make sense of these words, that is, comprehend. If you get a recipe and you read it and you know the words, what do you then do with those words? You use it for a purpose to make the food or the meal. If you want to find out how to hang curtains, you can read for a purpose. If you want to find out how to use a high pressure hose. I had to do that recently, and I googled it and read some information and watched the YouTube clip. So I could comprehend the information that was coming in and transfer it or translate it to a task. So reading's not just about recognising words, recognising text, it's about being able to comprehend the information. And within comprehension there's actually two areas that we look at. One is literal, and the other is what we call inferential. And the best analogy I've got for that is the Nemo analogy. So the literal interpretation of that book or that film is that it's about a dad trying to find his son and rescue him. But the inferential, the underlying stories or messages, are about friendship, resilience, persistence. So with comprehension, there's complexities within that task as well. There's 6 areas around reading that are what are known as the foundational skills, and a lot of us forget this, and in the early years the foundational skills are really critical. The first one, which is oral language, so we'll have a look at that. So there's oral language, phonological awareness, phonics, vocab, fluency and comprehension. Is anyone there familiar with any of those terms? Like, yeah, I know what phonics is, isn't that... Anyone? No? Any ideas around phonics? What's your notion of phonics? And it's okay if you're not exactly 100% right.
Yeah.
Sounding out, so associating a letter with the sound.
So instead of A, it's an A.
Yes.
So that difference
So a letter has a name and can also have a sound that goes with it. Yeah. So essentially that's what phonics is. Phonological awareness is, we're going to unpack it a little bit deeper. Speech therapists love phonological awareness. This is where we manipulate sounds. So when you're transferring your knowledge of a letter and a sound, you can transfer it to reading and also writing. Because reading is so strongly connected with writing, it's kind of tricky for us to separate them because they actually interplay all the time. So if you've read a book with your child and they want to draw a picture and have a go at writing some words to go with it, let them, because they're understanding quite a complex notion that all of this is connected. They're hearing stuff, so it's oral language. They're getting that letters and sounds can be joined together and pulled apart, and that's basically what phonological awareness is. They're getting the connection with phonics of letter and sound representation. Then we move into the word level, which is vocab, and then fluency is around how fast we can read, and comprehension, what does it all mean? I've worked with some students in the early years who also had a diagnosis of autism, so Asperger's, and a lot of these kids are pedantic and very skillful readers, so they're really good at decoding. But when you actually ask them, what's this about, what's this story about, they may have a very base level understanding of comprehension. Welcome.
I'll just sit on the floor over there so she can reach me.
Okay. Do you want to bring the hand over? All right, so as I said, there's those 6 areas of reading, and the first one is oral language. Experience and develop deep understandings of language, structure and sounds. I remember when I was a younger parent of younger boys, watching a current affair or something, and there was a family that had 6 children and 4 of them were Rhodes Scholars, so highly intelligent children, and they said, what did you do? What was your secret? And the mum said, I just talked to them all the time. Whenever they asked a question, I'd answer it. If they wanted to know about something and I didn't know, I talked to them. I cannot impress upon you enough how important talking with your kids, listening to them and just engaging in conversation, because you're actually modelling for them English language use. They're hearing it, so they're getting that receptive input, and they're practicing by responding to you. So that's what we call expressive. So they're expressing themselves, so that's part of oral language, and receiving, receptive. So if you know today that your child's got some issues around speech, maybe seeing a speech pathologist, ensure that you're having those conversations with your child's teacher, so they're aware of what they're targeting with your student. Often in the early years, your child may have some speech difficulties around articulation. So that may be, you hear kids saying, instead of saying snake, they may say nake. Instead of saying think, they may say ink. So it's those soft sounds that are usually problematic, and that's not a big problem, because developmentally it's not until 7 or 8 that we consolidate actually the oral motor skills to produce those sounds. So don't panic when you hear those cutesy interpretations. Sometimes it's developmental, but just if you're concerned, have a talk with your classroom teacher, and they can address that or maybe point you towards a speechy. But oral language is so much more than just being able to speak. It's about understanding what's coming in, so receiving and expressing. So who's got lots of talkers? Children that are talkers, that love talking, and it drives you to distraction. Enjoy it, because trust me, when they get to 15, 16, all you will get is a grunt. So enjoy it in the early years, because it does change, and it's really important that they've got a good, strong oral language. We often find difficulties with children who come from English as a second language because they don't have that strong base of English. So, you know, if you're an English-speaking family and your child's only ever been exposed to that, that sets them up for an easier transition to becoming a reader and writer. Phonological awareness is that ability to manipulate the sound. So that's when we do things like b, at, bat, and we listen to the last sounds like at. Let's put a s on the beginning. What word have we got? And they can take the B away or the B away, put the S in and go sat. Let's take that away and put a curt sound. What have we got? Cat. So that's what phonological awareness is manipulating the sounds. Often when we're testing children, we'll use nonsense words, so made up words, because what we're interested in looking at is that they can hear those sounds, they know what letters represent those sounds, and they can translate it to the written form. So sometimes if we're doing testing on your child, you may look at the test and go, what? Oh, that makes no sense. But just ask your teacher or learning support's doing something to just explain it, unpack it for you, the rationale behind it. So that's phonological awareness. They need strong phonological awareness and in particular phonemic awareness to be successful with developing and using phonics knowledge. Those children we know who lack phonemic awareness can have difficulties when it comes to using that repertoire or that bank of letters and sounds and putting it in different words. Or for spelling, so they're unable to internalise usefully their phonics. Research has repeatedly demonstrated that adequate phonemic awareness equals accelerated reading and spelling growth and decrease in incidence of reading failure. So I was a terrible reader, writer and speller in the beginning years of school because they missed a hearing impairment, which was a result of just middle ear infections. So if your child, and I know we're living on the coast here, so it's probably not unusual, if they've had a lot of middle ear infections, like repeated middle ear infections, it can frequently impact this area. So their oral language, their phonological awareness and their phonics, because they're not hearing the sounds, particularly those soft sounds. So if you know your child has, and you're seeing some difficulty in these early years with picking up reading, have a chat to your classroom teacher, have a chat to learning support here, Marianne, and she can unpack that a bit with you, because oftentimes I've worked with students who've had chronic middle ear infections and we've actually got extra support for them because their hearing loss has been at such a level for such a period of time, there's huge gaps in their learning, and Brisbane Catholic Education recognises that, and we can actually put some funding in place to support those learners. So I guess what I'm saying is if you've ever got a concern, please take it to your classroom teacher or Marianne, because we're here to help, because we know how important it is in these early years to get it right. That phonemic awareness and phonics is quite complex. I'm not going to unpack it because there's some parts of it that I don't even get. I often get a speech therapist in and say, what does this mean if a report comes in? So unless you're getting reports or concerns around that, you just need to be aware of phonemic awareness and phonics generally. We're not going. Oh, I'll just talk about this area here. I remember when I was a parent of a child, when Ollie was in grade 1, and the teacher said, yes, and you've got to do this scrapbook and it's for all the letters and sounds, and the first one is A. And I said, okay, Ollie, let's go, let's get the magazines. We're cutting out apples and aeroplanes and blah, blah, blah. And then we actually got a fail on that task because what she was wanting was the specific sound for the letter A, the A sound. So what happens in English, and this is where it gets tricky, is letters can be joined with other letters to make different sounds. So when you're doing homework or a task that's been set by the teacher, just be really mindful of what the task is about and don't sort of go off on, oh yeah, I know how to do this. Just really unpack it. For example, C. So if you were doing the letter C, C can actually make some different sounds because it can make a k sound for cat, it can make a S for circle, join it with a H and you've got church and you've got confusion. So it's about being mindful of how our letter system works, and we talk about graphemes, which are the units of written language, so that's CH or the C. We're not going to unpack that in detail, but just be mindful of that complexity with learning to read. And phonemes are just the sound. So graphemes, written, so grapho, writing, and phono, the sound. So what is phonics? So it's a combination of those two things. It's the relationship between the sound and also the letters that represent that. So when you're working with your child, you won't actually go, so what's the phonic we're working with here, and where's that? What phoneme can you hear, and let's represent it with a grapheme. You're not going to use that language, but it's good that that you've got a base understanding about it, because they may be hearing the sounds really well but not being able to transfer it to reading it, connecting that sound to the written form, or then writing it themselves.
Meg, can I just ask a question around that? With the phonemes, the students are up to a certain age in classes here, they're familiar with that word.
Oh, okay. Are you guys at Thras? Do you use Thras? Some classes, yeah. So that's okay. Yeah. Is there Jolly Phonics in the early years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
some kids would be using that terminology at home, perhaps, as part of their homework, and I know there'd be a lot of confusion amongst parents too about
What does
what's
that mean?
phoneme.
Yeah. Look, as a parent, if you're confused about something, we just have a rule at our school. It's okay to ask for help. Ask. There's no dumb questions. I've been working with Donna here at the school, and I'll often say, I've got some dumb questions for you. There are actually no dumb questions. They're just questions, and it's clarifying. And what we're all working together collaboratively is to build success for your child. So if they're coming home and using terms phoneme, don't forget to ask them, what's that mean? You're talking double Dutch to me. What does phonemes mean? Because by explaining to others, that reinforces our learning. Because trust me, when you get to year 9 algebra, you'll be asking lots of questions. What does that mean? So if you build that relationship with your child, that you're a learner as well, that you model for them risk-taking and that you don't get things and that's okay, that's a really important way that you can build the resilience. Remember at the very beginning I was talking about anxiety and resilience. That's what we don't want. We want our children to be risk takers, and we need to model that for them, to say, actually, I don't know here. Mum's going to ask your teacher as well, and we'll work it out together. And if they're using that language and it's used in the school, definitely reinforce it, and you can talk to your classroom teacher about, have you got a go-to guide around, because Thras is a very particular phonological and phonemic system, and Jolly Phonics is too, and they've all got their little branding, I guess you can call it, but the end result is children are still learning phonemes and graphemes, so sounds and letter representations. I know with Thras they've got a brilliant ready reference guide. Do you know the little the strip which has representations of all the letter sounds and combinations in a word to prompt it. So as they move through, I don't know if they're using that in the classroom. Sometimes I know for parents we've copied it so they can refer to it at home as well. So it's just a ready reference guide. But talk to your classroom teacher about that as well. Sight words. I'm not sure how sight words are being taught in the context here, and there's lots of different theories and ways to do it, but essentially sight words are those tricky words that don't follow that phonemic pattern. So welcome to English. Yeah, think of a word that rhymes with orange. That's always my favourite. I still haven't got one. Sight words are things like when, was. Was is a classic. They're just words that you can't sound out, and we need to learn how to read quickly, rapidly, and recognise and spell as well. And they talk about the Magic 100. Are you guys doing the Magic 100 here? Yep, so that's great. So that's a really good way to reinforce your child's reading of those high frequency or sight words. And it's about getting them very quick with those, that they instantly recognise them. Just so we use flashcards to build that up. So was, when, what, how, what, is, at, I. So all those words that you just want instant recognition, because remember when I showed you those 6 pillars, one of them is fluency. So as readers develop, you don't want them sounding out each word, because by the time they've gone the cat sat on the, you say, who sat on the mat? And they're like, I don't remember, that was way back there. So that's why you want that quickness in recognising sight words, and also that skill set building in the phonemic awareness, so that they become a more fluent reader, so they understand what they're reading, which is the purpose of reading, which is what we talked about earlier. So does that all make sense? Okay, so high frequency words. One of my favourite methods for doing this was shaving cream in the bath. I don't know, do kids still have baths? Baths, I used to love bath time. Great for oral language development. You know, where's the boat? Where's what? Don't hit your brother. You know, all that stuff. So it's, you know, that opportunity to talk. And, you know, the magnetic letters, we used to have those foam letters and just playing, oh, what's that hidden in the, you know, it's an S. What's a word that starts with S? So those opportunities, or what we call those incidental learning opportunities. You're reading the Weet-Bix box. Where's the W? Where's the word sound in that word? So they're what we call incidental opportunities. High frequency words. So if you see it, we call it environmental print. So if you look around this room, there's lots of environmental print, and you can say, oh, where's, you know, over here you can see at, where's at in this poster. So they're just getting that consolidation and repeated exposure. So that's just one way to build sight words. Shaving cream, so you make the letters on the back as well. Make sure it's on your back. You get a mini massage in between as well. So yeah, so they're tricky words, and the only way you can learn it is to memorise it. What we find, it's actually really interesting, children with autism and Down syndrome find it really difficult to hear, to get that phonological awareness, but they've got really good, strong visual understanding. They're what we call visual learners. They knock these over really quickly, and they actually end up learning a lot of other words visually, not using that letter sound system as much. So that's just a point of interest. Sometimes children who may not have a diagnosis may be more strongly visual as well. We just call that the profile of the learner, and they may find it tricky to distinguish sounds and letters, and may end up being more a visual reader and speller as well. And that's not a bad thing, that's just who they are. So speed and accuracy, that's what you're aiming for around sight words. Concepts about print. Donna, I was just going to unpack with the parents some of the monitoring tools that Brisbane Catholic Education is bringing in last year and this year. And one of them is concepts of print, which is basically, there's a list of things that your child needs to know as a beginning reader. For example, if one of the questions in it is, how do I hold the book? Where do I start? Because we don't hold it like that. But they're all things that we take for granted, but beginning readers need to actually learn. Another thing is, where do I start reading here? Am I reading, is the direction we read this way, or is it this way? This thing is one of the most powerful tools in learning to read. The finger, pointing to things, so that they see when you're reading where the wild things are. Oh, I finished that sentence. Have we finished the book? I used to really torment my children. Now that I think of it, they go, no, turn the page. Oh, what's a page? Where's the page? You know, you've got to turn the page. So you're making it fun. Oh, my stars, what's here? So you're talking to them about what's happening here. And that's really important because remember I talked about learning to read is about not just decoding the words, but this has a story and a purpose, and this one is to entertain. And that particularly with picture books, it's the duality of the words with the pictures working together to make the story. So lots of questioning. When I was a beginning parent, actually my son has found all these old videos of when they were little, and all you hear is my voice the whole time. But it's actually a good thing because, you know, that's what I was talking about. You've got to have that robust oral language for them to become confident readers and writers. So concepts of print, your teachers would have done that assessment or use that monitoring tool just to see where your child's at. And most people here prep parents, or we got ones and two, so prep parents?
Yes,
Yeah, so prep, that's the very first thing we look at. So just as a parent and as someone who's interested in teaching reading, always say things like, where's the cover, where's the title, who's the author? So constantly pointing it out so it really reinforces that this is always there, and they'll go, enough already, read the book. So, you know, then at the end, if they recognise, I really loved that book, Mum, well, we should go to the library and see if there's any other books by this author. So you're building that love of reading and love of learning as well. And that's what we do as learning support teachers. We put a lot of time, effort and energy in the early years to support our learners so we don't see them from about grade 3 onwards. That's what you want. Because remember I talked about in the early years, you're learning to read, and then from about grade 3 onwards, you're reading to learn. So if you're a good, strong reader, because you've invested all that time, effort and energy down here, then when you progress to the upper years, you're good to go because you're reading to learn. So just that modelling phase is where you're showing them what a good reader does, and this guide will help you with that too. So talk to the librarians or the teacher librarians or your classroom teacher about that. This is just showing you that reading is developmental, and that we're usually working down in this initial reading, decoding letter sounds, and then we're building with fluency for grade 3, and then see how here that next stage from grades 4 to 7 is reading for learning. A lot of people never get to this stage 5, a worldview as readers. It's just, you know, I don't know if anyone here has written a PhD or engaging in postgrad studies at university. So that's really what's, you know, that's that complex construction of text and reading as well. So most of us are working in this high school to college viewpoint, and that's okay. I just wanted you to show you that because I keep talking about that. In the early years we're learning to read, and then from about grade 3 we're reading to learn. So that's why we invest time and energy here in the early years. So basically, parents and teachers working together, we want to work with you. We love your children. That's why we're in this job. I showed a video to support teachers this morning about what the world would be like without teachers, and it was from children saying what it was like. One kid said it'd be chaos, mayhem. You know, teachers work with parents, parents work with teachers to support our learners to progress them. So please feel that you're really well supported here. I've only been coming to OLR this year, but I've been really impressed with how welcoming and supportive they are for me as someone who's new to the community. So you're very blessed that you've got such a supportive school that wants to do the right thing, and you know, parents as well that want to put on information days like this to support you. So that's a good thing. And as I said earlier, if there's any areas of need for your child, don't panic. It's good that challenges are recognised because then they'll be addressed and then children will progress. I know you guys do the mini-lit here as well. We did it at our school, and one of the most satisfying things with some of those intervention programs is when you do a pre-test, so you're getting a level, then you complete the program and you do the post-test and you're sending letters home saying, yep, they've hit all the targets. Some of us need intensive intervention. Some of us need our PT to say repeatedly, get back down and plank. You are not finished. So, you know, it's just how some of us need consolidation, need repeated practice, and that's okay. Some of us will get it straight away, but some of us don't, and that's okay too, as long as we're addressing it and looking at progress. So definitely work in collaboration with your teachers. Here at OLR, look, make it fun. It's meant to be joyful. Everything's got so serious. You know, I used to be silly crazy with reading with voices and stuff, and I actually found a video. It's actually sponsored by McDonald's, so forget that message, block your ears. But it's actually interviewing children and saying what can our parents do when they're reading to us. So I'll just share that with you now. And I'll need Kieran.
So just a hyperlink. You should be able to just click in. There you go.
It'd be really fun if my mum could do like these really funny accents, like if it was a male she could go, well, oh, I'm a mole man, and if she was like a lady she'd go, I'm a lady, and stuff like that. That would be really fun. Well, sometimes it's my dad that makes the funny voices like, yeah, meow. In a book there was one that, and it made me actually laugh and a bit scared, and I was just like, when I was reading, like, my mum makes silly faces. This was a big bad wolf looks like. I would say, read more quicker, because they read quite slowly a bit. I like the different stories and that, like, some stories are about fun things and some are about like doing stuff. I like to choose different books that are more adventurous and fun. I find it quite annoying. When I'm reading with Mummy and Daddy, they could do the picture and I could say what they're doing. It's always been me reading on my own, and it would be really nice to read with my mum again. I would want them to keep reading and actually do all the beeswax. Ouch. I didn't even put the camera there.
So yeah, one
of the things that I really impress upon when I'm working in schools and with teachers and parents is never forget the student voice. Often we're too busy trying to sort things and solve problems. We actually forget to ask them. Sometimes it can be something as simple as, I actually can't see it. Oh, you need to get your eyes checked. So don't forget to ask your child what they're enjoying, how's it going, what you could do differently, what you could do better. Do you want to do this? Actually, no, I don't want to do reading straight after school. I really just want to have a swim or a jump on the trampoline. I need some downtime. I mean, they're not going to articulate it as clearly as that, but their reluctance to engage in reading after school, maybe because their brain's been overloaded all day and they just need a break. So we're going to do half an hour of just free play, and then we'll do your homework. Or that your reading can be in blocks, so we're going to do 10 minutes, then we're going to have a 10-minute break, then another 10 minutes. So talk to them and ask them how you can make it more successful for them as well. So, any questions? I guess the main message I wanted out of this afternoon was that you knew that this resource was here, and that this resource is about targeting specific areas for your child as a reader. So you need to have those conversations with your classroom teacher to find out where you can be working specifically with them. Because each learner in this, even in this group, may be at very different levels and understandings, but that you're aware of this resource in the school and also the resource of your classroom teacher and the TLs, teacher librarian. So, any questions?
Is it maybe okay
Yep.
that my daughter is pretty much memorising the whole book and reading it? Not really, you know, is that okay?
So like rote learning the book.
Yeah.
What you can do, or what she can do, is what I get parents to do is photocopy the page, and you can cut up the words and she can reconstruct the sentence, and that'll give you an understanding of whether she's just memorising it and not connecting with that visual representation, that she just knows because she's read it so many times that that's what's happening on this page because I know the picture. So you're finding out that connection. So that would be the first thing that you would need to do, because reading is about decoding and getting those connections. So that's kind of a little way or a test that you can do to see that. Obviously, if they're memorising the same text, you need to change the text as well. If she's having success with that, definitely celebrate it. Oh, you're a great reader. I love that story. You know, what's it about? Then the comprehension. But you're still wanting to know, is she just memorising it, or is she reading it, reading those words, and that's how you can make the distinction. But always celebrate success. Don't say things like, oh, you're cheating, you're just remembering it. So, you know, remember I talked about always building on success. And when they make mistakes, and it's a word that you thought they knew, you know, those high frequency words, sometimes they may lose them or forget them. Particularly after Christmas holidays, we often see a little bit of a dip because we're all too busy, you know, here at the beach or whatever. So if you can even just do 10 minutes of reading every day, no matter what form, whether it's a magazine, the cereal box, even on the iPad, the iPhones, that they're engaging in text in whatever form, that's a good thing. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, sure.
I just want to ask a question, like, with the Australian curriculum,
Yes.
I'd be assuming that obviously that would be the same, like for literacy, in both Catholic, state,
Yeah.
independent schools.
Yeah.
And the reason I probably ask is, to me, it seems like it's almost like a bit of a, like a, what would you call it?
Safety
like
net?
a safety net, so that, like you said, you know, you're sort of picking up children at different stages and trying not to let them, because you're still here, especially around election time, while people are going to pay more money.
Yes.
There's so many people, like scary statistics, so many people getting to high school or out of school and they can't read.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be thinking, with the evolution of this sort of model,
Yeah.
that would be there to sort of really sort of
Yeah.
stop that.
So the national curriculum is just that. It's now a national curriculum. So we used to work off a Queensland syllabus, New South Wales. There's also differences in ages and stages. So kids were starting school at different times. So now we've got that uniformity with age for prep and uniformity with achievement standards. Also, I wanted to share with you those monitoring tools that BCE are now engaging in all schools. So I can actually bring up data of any school and any student to see where they are with their concepts of print, where they are with their letter sound knowledge, because what we want to do is ensure that all our learners are progressing. We may have some students in prep who've ticked all letter sound knowledge, all concepts of print, and are actually, you know, up to a level 4 or 5 text. So how are we progressing them as well? So it's not just the kids who have got some challenges, but it's also the kids that are really flying. How are we progressing them? So BCE, that's why BCE is engaging in those monitoring tools, is so that we can track and monitor and progress all our learners. And then identify in schools if there's some trends or areas of need. Teachers may need some professional development in an area, or you guys might be flying in an area and we need to progress it through other ways. I was involved in a professional development the other day with the school around gifted and talented. So that conversation was around differentiation. How do we make learning with those achievement standards deeper, richer, more complex for those learners? Or are they moving up to a higher achievement standard and higher year level? So you're absolutely right. It is a safety net, as is the monitoring tools and the data that we're collecting. It's to inform us about our learners so we can help progress them. It's not a big brother just, you know, looking at you and why aren't you doing this? It's about, oh, this is interesting. I was talking to Donna the thing I love about data is you see different things happening in different schools. Some things are working really well, some things may not be so well in different schools, and it gets us saying, so why is that? Do we need to look at that? And it's the same with you, with your kids. Sometimes they'll progress really well, and then they'll hit a wall, and you need to ask, well, what's going on here? I know my son in year 5 hit a wall, and it was because he couldn't see. He needed glasses. So it's something as simple as that. So, you know, just be, you know, that's what monitoring is, just listening and looking and thinking, well, why is this so? But this resource, it was one of the first questions I asked when I came here. Do you use First Steps? Yep. Have you got the parent information sheets? Yep. How do you get it out to parents? They said, we've got a book. I said, can I see it? Here it is. So this is your Ready Reference Guide, working with teachers. But you need to be strategic. You need to know, what am I actually supporting my child? What's the gap here? Or what do we need to build up? So have that very targeted conversation with your teacher.